process supervision outperforms outcome supervision for mathematics. GPT-4 knows a surprising amount of geography. Google scales up a multilingual vision and language model, and Japan takes the view that copyright does not apply to AI training. Welcome to AI News with Samuel Albany. Let's verify step by step is new work from OpenAI finding that process supervision significantly outperforms outcome supervision for training models to solve problems from the challenging math dataset. The authors compared reward models trained with each kind of supervision and used them to rank generated solutions. Process supervision was consistently better. Process supervised reward models also generalized better to other topics. This is promising for AI alignment, since process supervision is more likely to produce interpretable reasoning because it encourages models to follow a process endorsed by humans. Given its superior performance, the authors suggest that process supervision in fact incurs a negative alignment tax, in the sense that it may be useful for alignment and improved capabilities. Next, an all-star team that spans the Camel Lab at Cambridge, Göttingen, University of Hong Kong, and your humble narrator brings you GPT-4 for Geo, how a language model sees the world's geography. This work studies the degree to which GPT-4 has factual geographic knowledge and is capable of using this knowledge for interpretive reasoning. The paper probes its knowledge of socio-economic factors like population, life expectancy, and CO2 emissions across countries. It is found that GPT-4 knows a lot, allowing it to navigate complex journeys across time zones, approximately reconstruct the Hong Kong mass transit railway map, and describe much of the global semiconductor supply chain. PaLI-X, on scaling up a multilingual vision and language model, is work from Google that develops a new multilingual vision and language model and demonstrates that scaling both vision and language components together increases performance across a wide range of tasks. Significant gains come from greater model capacity, enabling PaLI-X to achieve state-of-the-art results via fine-tuning on 15 benchmarks. It is found that with a high-capacity 22 billion parameter vision encoder, it is possible to co-train for image classification and OCR, and see benefits in tasks that require text-within-image understanding. The authors also find that using both prefix completion and masked token completion improves the Pareto frontier for fine-tuning versus few-shot performance at large scale, with improved trade-offs over variants of previous models like Cosmos 1, PaLI, and Flamingo. AmbiFC, fact-checking ambiguous claims with evidence, presents a large-scale fact-checking dataset with realistic claims derived from real-world information needs. Ambiguity is a big challenge in fact-checking. For example, consider the claim that it is illegal in Illinois to record a conversation. This seems very clear, but now compare it to the evidence that Illinois made it a crime to use an eavesdropping device to overhear or record a phone call or conversation without the consent of all parties to the conversation. Is the claim still unambiguous? If we consider parties recorded without consent, the claim is true. If we consider that consent may have been given, the claim is false. We could also consider a neutral interpretation where the evidence considered does not directly support or refute the claim. To study such challenges, the AmbiFC dataset contains 10,716 distinct claims with supporting evidence from Wikipedia. A key aspect of the work is to use annotator disagreement in combination with uncertainty labels as an important signal to identify ambiguous cases. The impact of positional encoding on length generalization in transformers looks at the issue of length generalization, i.e., generalizing from smaller training context windows to larger ones. The authors compared the length generalization performance of decoder-only transformers with 5 different position encoding approaches. The results are surprising. They find that no positional encoding, or NOPE, does best when comparing downstream performance. These studies are conducted in a relatively small-scale regime, 107 million parameters, so it will be interesting to see if these intriguing findings transfer to larger models. The authors share code. Twitter's algorithm, amplifying anger, animosity, and effective polarization from Cornell Tech and Berkeley, conducts a pre-registered controlled experiment on Twitter's algorithm, finding that it amplifies emotional content, and especially those tweets that express anger and outgroup animosity. The experiment was run over 2 weeks in February 2023 and collected 1,730 pairs of timelines to compare algorithmic tweet selection versus the simple reverse chronological timeline. Users were then surveyed about the tweets in both truth timelines. One interesting finding is that users prefer algorithm-selected tweets in general, but not when it came to political content. Large language models as toolmakers proposes a closed-loop framework where LLMs create their own reusable tools for problem solving. The key idea is that a powerful model like GPT-4 can be employed to make tools, which in this case take the form of Python functions, and can wrap them in such a way that they can be reused by a weaker but cheaper model like GPT 3.5 Turbo. When faced with a set of incoming tasks, a lightweight dispatcher model can be used to determine whether the necessary tool exists, or if a new tool should be made. Reusing tools allows GPT 3.5 Turbo to close much of the gap to GPT-4 on a range of tasks, while keeping inference costs manageable. The authors release code. Do language models know when they're hallucinating references is work from Microsoft Research that observes that language models are notorious for generating text with hallucinations, a primary example being book and paper references. The authors find that many of these fabrications can be identified with the same language model using only black box queries. After generating a particular title, the model is probed with direct queries to ask if the title exists, and indirect queries that ask more open-ended questions whose answers can be compared for consistency. This work focuses on groundedness, i.e. whether the generated title exists somewhere in the model's training data, rather than correctness, which refers to whether the generated text is factually correct. As one would expect, hallucination is lower in more powerful models like GPT-4, but still very significant. Using consistency checks on a weaker model doesn't help much, perhaps because there is so much hallucination. However, it makes a dramatic improvement to the more powerful GPT-4 model. Learning to generate novel scientific directions with contextualized literature-based discovery looks at generating scientific hypotheses in natural language, while grounding them in a context that controls the hypothesis search space. The authors look at two formulations of contextual literature-based discovery: idea sentence generation and idea node prediction, in which the task is to predict some particular type of output like a method or evaluation metric. A dataset is curated to study the task and several baselines are explored. Code is made available. A quick roundup of other news. Technomancers.ai reports that Japan goes all in and declares that copyright doesn't apply to AI training. This applies regardless of whether it is for non-profit or commercial purposes, whether it is an act other than reproduction, or whether it is content obtained from illegal sites or otherwise. The UAE's Falcon 40B model, released by TII in Abu Dhabi, is now royalty-free. This model has made waves after ranking first on Hugging Face's leaderboard for LLMs, outperforming models like Llama. Onto AI risk. An article in the Sunday Times outlines some of the threats from AI. These include unintended consequences from powerful models that are poorly understood, chemical weapons that are synthesized at speed, killer robots that stem from ever greater levels of autonomy deployed in weaponry, and deaths of despair from the impending employment challenges caused by AI. The Guardian reports that the US Air Force has denied running a simulation in which an AI drone killed its operator. The denial comes after a colonel described the strategies that a drone had identified to maximize reward in a simulated test. The simulation, if it had happened, which it didn't, will likely be unsurprising for those who have trained RL agents and observed them learn strange behavior, such as the famous speedboat example from OpenAI, where a boat finds its best option is to hammer out donuts to reap mega scores. What has driven the interest in the drone setting, however, is presumably the higher stakes domain, although winning boat races is also really important. AI is not an arms race, writes Katja Grace in Time magazine, pointing out that neither party can necessarily win. We can coordinate our way out of such traps, she notes. We can talk to each other, we can make commitments and observe their adherence, and we can lobby governments to make agreements. In The White House Agrees You Have a Small Brain, Eric Hole outlines the case for risk and discusses the almost religious nature of the debate. Put simply, the threat of extinction in the face of AI boils down to the fact that artificial neural networks like GPT-4 are not bounded in the same way as our biological neural networks. Not everyone shares the view that AI represents an existential risk. Preparing for an AI apocalypse is as preposterous as preparing for an alien invasion, writes Hodan Amar. When considering the recent letter to prioritize mitigating AI risk, which your humble narrator signed, Hoden writes that by their logic, policymakers should immediately elevate the threat of an alien invasion to a global priority too. Top AI researcher dismisses AI extinction fears, challenges hero scientist narrative, writes VentureBeat. Kyunghyun Cho, a respected researcher who has made a number of significant research contributions, observed that our job as scientists, and also the policymakers, is to be critical about many of these apparent advances that may have both positive as well as negative impacts on society. Next, Seth Lazar, Jeremy Howard, and Arvind Narayanan ask, is avoiding extinction from AI really an urgent priority? Pointing out that the history of technologies suggests that the greatest risks come not from the tech, but from the people who control it. The authors say that the possibly extreme risks from future AI systems should be part of that conversation, but they should not dominate it. Moreover, we should be wary of Prometheans who want to both profit from bringing the people fire and be trusted as the firefighters. On to resources. Educator Sebastian Raschke has created an online course called Deep Learning Fundamentals that uses PyTorch and Lightning. The lectures are available for free. OpenAI has announced a cybersecurity grant program that allocates $1 million to empower defenders, measure capabilities, and elevate discourse. Given the focus on defense, the post says that offensive security projects will not be considered for funding at this time. Finally, turning to commentary, Tristan Dott has written in The Scholar contemplating the new nature of surveillance images. This article is written in the context of proposed French legislation to enable more use of AI for security at the upcoming 2024 Olympic Games. Of course, video-driven surveillance is not a new practice, he writes. What is new, though, is the degree of sophistication of current AI models. Now it's time for Samuel's book recommendation. This week, I'm recommending Founders at Work by Jessica Livingston. This book is a collection of interviews with founders and early employees at startups that describes the challenges of the early days. It's a treasure trove of hard-won experience. Last, I'll mention a project I am working on called Filtir. We're focused on fact-checking ChatGPT outputs. If you're interested in finding out more, you can find our Discord link in the video description. Also in the video description, you can find links to the mentioned articles. I hope you have a wonderful day.